Hi everyone, Sophie Acott from Happy Baby Sleep here. Today I'm going to be talking about catnapping. So what are the main reasons that our babies catnap and what can we do about it? So I find that catnapping is a very common sleep difficulty, especially in the first 3 months of life. And the reason being is that from 0 to 3 months, our babies are still establishing their circadian rhythm, which is their internal body clock. So as a result, it's not uncommon for us to experience sleep difficulties and inconsistent sleep patterns during this time. If you're finding, and catnapping as a result, but if you're finding that, from 3.5 to 4 months onwards, you're still experiencing the catnapping difficulty with your baby during the day, the main reasons that contribute towards the catnapping I find are, perhaps an inconsistent routine. So I find it's really important to focus on an age-appropriate awake time, rather than set times during the day, and this can really help stop the catnapping habit. So, the two main things that contribute to catnapping is either being overtired or them being undertired. So, for example, if your baby is 6 months, then the awake time for their age I like to focus on is around 2 hours. So if you're putting them down, say at an hour and a half, which is before the 2 hour mark, then they're likely to be undertired. So catnapping as a result, very common. And the same thing if you're putting them down, 2.5 hours or after that, optimal window of around 2 hours, they're going to become overtired. So you're going to be met with the same sort of resistance and then experience, them not sleeping for as long as what they perhaps are capable of. So I find that they're the two main things, being overtired or undertired. So a consistent routine can really help, be able to make sure that your baby sleeps for as long as possible. And you can check out my blog on my website, which has an article on there called Getting Into a Routine. So that has a list of the appropriate awake times to focus on in the first 12 months, and I find that's really useful. So routine's probably number one, and I find that catnapping really is a timing issue. So if you've covered off routine, you're about 90% of the way there. And then in addition to this, I like to focus on the environment. So the three key things in the environment is, making sure that they're warm enough. So I like to focus on 19 to 22 degrees in the environment. It's getting really cold at the moment, especially if you're in Melbourne. So focusing on a room that's sort of 19 to 22 degrees. You might keep that consistent with a bar heater. I know I do with my kids for naps and bedtimes. I normally have that set on 20, which means they stay nice and toasty. In addition to that, in addition to keeping the environment sort of consistently warm, you want to focus on having, their bedding appropriate for the weather as well. So around this time of year, you'd be looking around about, from a baby that's 3 months onwards, up until 12 months, because up until 12 months, they can't regulate their body temperature. So it's really important that they do stay nice and warm. And so a onesie, long sleeve onesie underneath a bodysuit, such as a bond suit, 2.5 tog sleeping bag, and then 2 to 3 cotton blankets, on top of that. So that's probably ideal. And then in addition to keeping nice and warm, I like to look at white noise. That'll stop any them waking from any distractions in the environment, such as noises outside or inside noises, perhaps mum and dad making a bit of a racket while baby's trying to sleep. So it'll just make sure that it drowns out any distractions due to noise. So keeping that consistent for daytime and bedtime sleep is paramount, as is also making sure that they have a dark environment for sleep. So the main reason with the dark environment is so they don't become distracted by being able to see around them when they're going to sleep and when they're waking up, so it's nice and dark. And also having a dark room helps to promotes the release of melatonin, which is the sleep hormone. So while getting our babies out in the sunshine during the day helps to stimulate the production of melatonin, having them in a nice dark room for naps and bedtime helps release that sleep hormone. So very important to keep our rooms nice and dark. And then on top of that, it's really important that we're getting our babies down to sleep, while they're awake, if that makes sense, to encourage self-settling. So one of the biggest things that I see, or the sleep difficulties I see with parents is, their babies being really dependent on mum and dad, to rock or pat or feed them to sleep. And so what tends to happen is our babies fall asleep this way, relying on mum and dad with that intervention, then they wake after one sleep cycle and wonder where mum and dad have gone. And then obviously requiring the same intervention, whether that was rocking, patting or feeding, to get back into the next sleep cycle. So it can be exhausting for mum and dad and, tiring, and it just means that your baby will keep that catnapping habit. So on top of those sort of things, I think, a lot of people have asked me about settling and, settling techniques. I like to focus on all the above first. So, the routine, the environment, and putting our babies to bed awake first and foremost before I discuss settling. And the only reason is that I find that it really depends on your baby's temperament as to the settling technique that you use. Some babies prefer the hands-on, the touch and to be close to mum and dad, when they're being settled back to sleep. Others really find that too stimulating. So, it can settle better with you checking in on them periodically. Definitely not crying it out or anything like that, but just, checking in on them rather than being right there in their face while they're trying to get back to sleep. So I'll try and address all the above first and then look at settling. One technique you can use, if you know that your baby's spot on wakes up after 45 minutes, or if it's 30 minutes, and they do this every single time, without fail, then you can use a technique called wake to sleep. And how you do that is, before they wake during their nap. So if they're doing 45 minutes, for example, then you go in sort of maybe at the 35, 40 minute mark and sort of lightly rouse them from their sleep. So slightly wake them up. You don't obviously want to startle them, but when you notice them coming out of their sleep, then use whatever technique that you use. If they've got a dummy, if you shush pat, or whatever technique you find settles your baby back to sleep, you can do that, and hopefully you'll get another sleep cycle out of them. But it has to, for this technique to work, it really depends on your baby being, a catnapper to a T. So, a certain, a set period of time that they sleep consistently for that to work. So if you have any other questions about catnapping, or what you can do, or how I can help you with your baby in their catnapping, please get in touch with me, Sophie at happybabysleep.com.au, or you can post on my Facebook page. I have a Q&A on my on my Facebook page on Wednesdays, so feel free to jump on and ask me any questions there, and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.